Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. What you're looking at here is the French set from Historical Board Gaming. And if you've been part of this community for a while, then you just know how excited people are that this set has come out, because the only thing that we had access to before was the French pieces that came in the Global 40 game, or actually I guess that would have been the Europe 40 game, and what they were was Russian pieces that were printed in blue plastic, except for the infantry. The infantry were actual French sculpts, but the rest of it was all Russian, right? And so that's all you could get. And even with Historical Board Gaming, they didn't have any dedicated French pieces. They just had allied pieces that they printed in blue. So there really wasn't any authentic French pieces. And I guess probably because France's role in the war was not that big, right? I mean, it was it was actually pretty big, but like their army didn't play a big role in the war because it was defeated so quickly. Before we get into looking at that, though, let's just take a look at France and talk about that for a minute. It kind of bothers me, when people talk about it. And I've made jokes before too, but basically all they think of when they think of France is somebody who surrenders, And if that's all you think, and that happened, yes, but if that's all you think, then you really don't know what you're talking about. France is a whole lot more than that. One of the reasons that the West is the way it is because of France. Back in the 1700s, the late 1700s, there was an event called the French Revolution, and that revolution was the very start of not the very start. I guess you could say Greece was the very start where they had the idea, but that was where the idea was realized, where common people would have freedom, right? Where there would be democracy, and it was painful at first. There was still a lot of wars to come after that, but I mean, anyway, that French Revolution was one of the biggest events in the history of humanity. It touched off a lot of other revolutions, especially across Europe, where peasants rose up. Like before that, what it was a monarchy, right? So the king ruled France, and basically the king owned everything, right? But and also, like, you had your aristocracy. You had people with titles, right? So they would own big swaths of land, and if you wanted to farm, then like you had your own farm, but you had to pay some idiot, some rich guy money, because theoretically it was his property and not yours, right? And the only reason it was his property was because the king said, "I'll let you have this property," right? So anyway, there was this aristocracy that was there, and it was like you could say it was all over Europe. It was like that. It was a feudal system like that, right? So what happened when the Second World War came around? The descendants of that aristocracy, for the most part, that was who made up the Vichy for the most part. They were descendants of the aristocracy, and it never sat well with them that they lost all their power, right? They figured that they had the inherent right to rule over peasants, like that these people shouldn't have the same rights as they did, that land belonged to them, and not really them, but belonged to their ancestors, and so it should be their land. It shouldn't be the peasants' land, and it never sat well with the aristocracy. And it was so when France was attacked by Germany in 1939. It was those people who took over. Like, there was a lot of confusion in France due to how fast the lightning war happened. Like, people talk about how sad it was that they that they surrendered so easily. But all of Europe surrendered that easily. Like you look everywhere. I mean, not Italy, but because Italy was on their side, all of these nations fell, and there was hardly a fight put up. Like they all fell. And with France there, they actually had one of the toughest armies in the world at the time, but they were all here on the Maginot Line, right? And Germany went around them. They went through the Netherlands and Belgium with their tanks and their mechanized infantry. They were by far the most advanced, technologically advanced army in the world, and nobody saw it coming, right? Like it was just overwhelming, and before you knew it, they were on the outskirts of Paris, and so there was confusion, and the government was moving around, and it was the aristocracy who they kind of took control. You know what I mean? Like not everybody wanted to surrender. The patriots, they wanted to move their government down here into North Africa and to fight from here. The French Navy was still pretty powerful, right? It was for the time it was a large navy, and so they were going to move down here, even though the soldiers had been surrounded. The ones that were on the Maginot Line here, they had been surrounded, and 2 million of them were captured and held prisoner by the Germans. They didn't let them go because they didn't want the Vichy to be very strong. So anyway, it was the Vichy, it was this old aristocracy that had taken over, and this became a free part of, this was Free France down here, and it's not what you think, like Free France that we think of as the ones that didn't surrender. But when I say Free France, this was Vichy France. There's a town in here called Vichy, and that's where they set up their government, and that's why they were called Vichy, was because of the town where they set up the government. But anyway, the Germans weren't down here. This was a free zone down here where the French were. And it was only up here in Lorraine, in Picardy, that the Vichy did not have any control whatsoever. The Germans had control over these territories, and the Vichy had complete control over this territory. And with the rest there, the Vichy, they were basically just civil administrators, right? Like they administered the population. They were the mayors and, the people that, got things done for the civilian population. But the Germans were still there. So if anybody stepped out of line, of course, you know what happened to them. There was it was a worldwide war, right? And it's such a compelling conflict and so many different stories that all over the world that you could spend your whole life studying them, and you'd still only scratch the surface. But for me, the most compelling story of the war was La Resistance, like the French Revolution, the patriots who stayed in France and who surreptitiously fought against the Vichy and the Germans, right? Like, I mean, you think about back then, like today, I mean, we take for granted that there's satellites and everything like that, right? And we know what's going on. But the Germans had really made this a fortress. They'd done this Atlantic wall. There was fortifications all along there and troops and everything. The Germans had sewn up the Germans and Italians had sewn up all of Europe there. And so there's no way you could know what was going on over there, like as far as the strength of the German army and where their fortifications were, and just anything to do with the things that you needed to do to fight a war against them, right? And so it was the resistance that relayed the information out to the British, and of course with the British, that went out to the rest of the Allies as well, right? But the resistance was crucial in letting the outside world know what was going on inside of Europe. And also, when D-Day did come around, then they were the ones that were hampering the Germans' ability to get to Normandy, like to bring their reinforcements to Normandy. Like they were demolishing rail lines and bridges and things like that, just being a pain in the ass. I mean, they were just citizens, like they didn't have tanks or anything, right? So they could only do so much. But I mean, the bravery that these people showed was just incredible. But as far as France surrendering, any country in the world that was located right next to Germany would have had no choice but to surrender. Like the Germans, they just rolled over. At that point in human history, nobody was up to that challenge. Even our good friends over in America there. If America was right beside Germany, then Germany would have rolled over America, and it would have been either surrender or die. It's your choice. The French army was probably even stronger than the American army in 1939. I mean, that didn't last for very long, right? The Americans, the amazing thing about their effort in the war, the most amazing thing was how they mobilized and how they became a force once they did decide to enter the war, how they became such a strong force, and their ability to mobilize like factories and their civilian population and their armies and everything. It was truly astounding. But at the time, like the Germans would have rolled over them too. I mean, they would have had to surrender. But of course, I mean, if they were next door, then who knows what would have happened? Like they wouldn't have, they wouldn't have been so pacifist, so who knows? Like it's just speculation. All I'm saying is don't be too hard on France for surrendering. If Britain had been there without the water in between, Britain would have surrendered. There's just no stopping the Germans back in 1939. But that's what happened, and so that's why probably it took so long to get this French set out. And it's a beauty, let me tell you. Like they're really, really nice pieces. I know you've probably seen them before because there's been lots of pictures online, and there's been some good videos too. G.I. Joe did an excellent job of painting his and weathering them and everything. I recommend you see his video. So there's the regular infantry sculpt, and you get 16 of those. You don't see 16 here, but that's because I kept a few of them to be Vichy. Like here's my Vichy over here. I don't paint my Vichy just so they'll be a slightly different color, and so it'll be easier for me to tell. And also for the Vichy, I'm just using the old pieces of everything else, right? These would be the old Russian pieces that were colored in blue, but I do have the newer infantry. But anyway, there's 16 of those infantry that you get. And then also there's, you get 4 Foreign Legion. The French Foreign Legion is a legendary force, really. They were mostly in Africa down here. So when we were playing our game a couple of weeks ago, if you caught any of that, we weren't really too sure, like in the rule set that I had there, it didn't explain too much, but I've since gotten another rule set. And so we were going on the assumption that maybe they were an elite infantry unit, which would be attack 3, defense 5, but that's not what it is as of this moment anyway. As of this moment, they're attack 2, defense 4, but first strike in desert territory. So that's what the Foreign Legion is going to get you over and above the Colonial Infantry. The Colonial Infantry is the same price, but they wouldn't have first strike. So anyway, the Foreign Legion does have a special ability. The fighters, so what are they? I'm just looking at the website here. It's a D520 fighter. You get 8 of these things. So there's a couple of them down here. That's why you only see 6. But anyway, try to get you up close there. Anyway, they're pretty nice. The reason it took me so long to get this out was because I wanted to get all magnets on them and everything, and so I could get the flight stands. Plus, I had to paint them all and everything, right? And then over here we have the tactical bombers. You get 4 tactical bombers. So they're Bruget 690. That's what they are. So there's 2 here, and then I've got 2 of them on the carriers. These are the carriers right here. I've got magnets on them as well, right? I didn't bother saving any of those for the Vichy. Like, you're probably not going to have any carriers for the French. Even in that game where I just played, where Paris never fell, and no French territory was actually invaded. Even then, I didn't build a carrier. I had a small carrier, which was on the last stage of development, but it didn't make it into the game. So I don't see you using a carrier in Global 40, certainly, but in this game here, you just never know. If Germany hadn't been so strong, like taking Russia so easily, then the French would have had a little bit more money and they might have bought a carrier, because I had 3 boats that I was ready to make the final payment on. I just didn't, because Germany was doing such a good job of convoying and with hitting Paris with rockets, that I didn't have that much money to be spending on ground units and on boats. But you never know, you might use 1 or 2 of these. I really like the transports here, the Golo transports. That's a really, really nice sculpt. It's a beauty. For those people who like to do the really good paint jobs, these are going to turn out really nice. G.I. Joes look really, really, really nice. So that's the transports, and there's 8 of these. There's 8 of most of the boats. Like there's 8 transports. There's 8 of these cruisers. These are can't remember what those were called. Anyway, these are the cruiser here. They're painted like I paint the tips and everything. Paint them yellow just for ease of identification. It's not. It looks cool too, but that's not why I paint it that way, to make it look cool. I do that because there's so many boats in this game that it's much easier to just look and say, okay, I got 2 yellows. That means I've got 2 cruisers and a couple of blues. That's destroyers. You know, it's just easier to look at a pile of units and see what you've got in there if you got color coded. So those are suffering class heavy cruisers, and the destroyers. There's 8 of those as well. There, I got 4 up here and 4 down here. So they are Le Fantastique class destroyers. They're a pretty nice sculpt as well. I really like that. I like all of these pieces. That they're all pretty nice. The subs are, like they're just kind of boring, but so is everybody else's, right? I mean, what's a sub? It's just a big cylinder, right? There's nothing special about anybody's sub sculpt. So, but it's kind of cool to have their own. The battleships is maybe my favorite piece, and you can see I've got I think 3 of them painted black and 1 of them painted red. I use black for my battleship color. You see, it's the Richelieu battleship. But the red I use for heavy. So just in case France ever decides to build a heavy battleship. Normally, France does not get to develop weapons in the 36 game, but I have a house rule where everybody gets a weapon at the start of the game, including France. So who knows? Like they might get a heavy bomber or something, and if that happens, then who knows? They might actually. Anyway, like I don't need 4 battleships, so might as well paint one of them red, right? So there I go. And I do have a fast battleship too, but that I'll show you that in a bit. That's it's more likely you build a fast battleship. But anyway, there's those. What else? What haven't we looked at? So these are the mechs here. These mechs are really quite different than any other piece I've seen. Not just different than any other mech sculpt, but really different from any other little piece that I've seen. What are they? The Lorraine 1938 L mech, and the artillery's the 1935 B artillery. So that's these sculpts here. These are pretty nice too, the artillery sculpts. Again, really nice for the French to have their own. I don't know that they're any better than the Russian sculpts, because the Russian artillery was actually pretty nice as well, but it was Russian, right? And then the tanks, it's actually a heavy tank. It's a Char B. You get 4 of those as well. And one of the things you'll notice is that it's easy to take the turret off. Like when I got mine, there was a couple of turrets that weren't even on there. So you just take a little dab of glue and you put it in there. Like I've seen you get tanks on shapeways like that too, right? So that you can play around with them. But for me, these pieces are too small to be turning your turrets and going, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a big Tonka toy or something. So just put a dab of glue in there so you don't lose your turret, and you'll be fine. What else? Oh, the medium bombers. These medium bombers are really quite nice as well. Oops, let me get that in the picture there. They don't give you any strategic bombers. Again, you'll probably never buy one. But I mean, you've got your strategic bombers from your other game. Here, I don't think we should give you a close up. There's the Foreign Legion. I also glued them onto my. I had Foreign Legion chips before that I used to use. So anyway, that's really cool that they have another type of specialist infantry as well, and you actually start the game with one of those. So that's neat. But you know, of course, you're going to need a little bit more than that. Like these pieces here, you don't get. This is my Maginot line, and there's the Free French flag and the French flag, and from Ebard, there's a couple of the pieces, the Eiffel Tower, and geez, it escapes me right now. But I've also got. You're going to need Vichy units, right? So these are just the unpainted units, like I said, and I gave them a few of the infantry. And you're going to need a little bit more than that, though, but not much. I mean, I've got way more than I need, right? Let's just put this over here. So, like, I've got you might want a seaplane, right? And there's the bomber and transport plane. For me, I've got a house rule that I haven't been able to use much because still trying to learn the game and everything. It's not really a good time to throw in a lot of house rules, but my Global War Heroes, I love that unit. It worked out really well, the games that I played with it. And then you've got your leaders from the expansion set. There's no anti-aircraft guns, so a few of those are the French ones there. You're going to need a bit of cavalry, and there's 3 different kinds of factories. Escort carriers. That's the word I was looking for. And again, just in case they were to develop super subs, then I've got 3 of those. And I think these are in the opening setup there. There's a torpedo boat destroyer and a coastal sub. This is a 3D printed piece. This is the Alsace battleship. So I thought I'd make that one the fast battleship. That's a really nice sculpt, but you know, that's one of the more expensive ones. They used to sell that. It's been out of stock for a long time, but you can get it on Shapeways. And then these, I'm just gonna, even though the Char B was supposed to be a heavy tank, I'm just gonna use those as regular tanks because there are no regular tank sculpts here. This is what I've got. I've got some of these. These are the ARL 44s. You look at how much bigger those are, and those are a true heavy tank as well, right? So I've got 3 of those just in case the French happen to have developed heavy tanks, right? And then there's the Priest self-propelled infantry or artillery. There's a few different kinds of light tanks here. I could see you building some light tanks, and also there's the partisans and the mechanized, or no, these are motorized infantry. Sorry. You don't get any motorized infantry. So these are just the Polish trucks that are painted, right? And then the armored cars. And then for everybody, of course, I've got custom infantry, right? And then these pieces that I haven't painted here, they are like the mountain infantry, the militia, the airborne, the Marines. You'll just need a few of those each, right? Probably more militia than the other ones, but yeah, there's a bit of mountains there that are in France and also down in Algeria. So mountain infantry is pretty important for them. So you need a little bit of the other stuff too. Partisans if you're going to play with partisans, but you'll get those in the partisan set. Same with the leaders. If you play with the leader set, you'll get a few of those. So there's not many, like there's really not that many more units that you're going to need if you have this set. And this is much more than you're going to need. Like this is probably enough for 2 people, right? So you could buy a set, you know, like if you've got a friend that also plays the game, buy one set and then split it between the two of you, because you're probably not going to use more than 4 destroyers or 4 cruisers, right? Or 4 subs, 4 transports. 2 battleships will be enough. The only thing that you won't have enough of is probably the Foreign Legion, the mechs, and the artillery and the tanks. But this set is only available for a short period of time. Pretty soon it'll be where there are no more sets, and you will have to buy these units like you buy everything else off of Historical Board Gaming, where you buy them 5 at a time. So if you and a friend of yours split a set, then when those become available, like you buy 5 more tanks and 5 more of these and 5 more of these and 5 more of these, that'll probably do you, right? Oh, maybe some tactical bombers too, because you only get 4 of those. But as far as the medium bombers go, like 2 would probably be enough for you to play the game. Even, like I said, even that last game there, you're still not buying really expensive units, because it's not like Germany went away. They're still next door, and you have to pile a lot of expensive units on there, or I mean cheap units on there to protect the Maginot Line. Anyway, so that's the French set, and like I said, really excited about that. Glad to put it in my game. And you're probably wondering, is he going to give away a French set? Is he going to? No, he's not. Actually, he is. Courtesy of Doug Friend at historicalboardgaming.com. This is the full French set here. I didn't set it all up because, well, I'm feeling a little bit lazy today. Took me a while to clean. This board was still set up from the last game, and it took me a while to clean that off and set my French set up. So anyway, take my word for it. There's 16 infantry and 4 Foreign Legion, and the whole set. What you see on the website, there's the 8s of this and the 4s of that and everything. So a whole set there for you that I'm going to give away. And I thought just to add a little bit of spice to that, I'm going to throw in 7 of my custom infantry. These are all different sculpts, all unique sculpts. And I'll throw these in with the French set. Then you'll have much more than enough infantry, much more than you'll need. There's just slightly a different color. Like my blue is a little bit darker than that, so you can get over that though. You could use these for your specialist kind of infantry, like your Marines or your airborne, or you could make these into your infantry and use these ones here as your militia and all those other specialist infantry. You can do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. I'm just throwing these in, and Doug's throwing those in. So how are we going to win those? When I hold these contests and I tell people, don't tell anybody in the comments, invariably somebody in the comments says, yeah, I'd like to enter your contest and here's how. I tell you not to do that, because you would have a better chance of winning if you don't tell people how to enter the contest. Because some people just go to my videos now, because I give away a lot of prizes, and they just say, I want to enter the contest. If that's all it says on their comment, then I'm not giving it to them, right? Like, I'm not entering them in the contest. So you have to do something. Like I give you some kind of hoop that you're going to have to jump through. And I know this isn't really French, but I thought about it. I said, okay, well, French fries. I love French fries. I loved them all my life. If you met me and you see that I don't have a 6-pack anymore, that I probably ate too many French fries in my life. My favorite topping on French fries is not too many people eat them just by themselves, right? My favorite is something that we have up here in Canada, and every Canadian will know what I'm talking about, and some Americans will know, but other people may not. There's a thing up here in Canada that's called poutine, or that's how the English people pronounce it anyway. I think the French is like poutine or something like that. But what it is, it's French fries and cheese, and then gravy on top of the cheese and French fries. So by the time you start eating it, that cheese is melted in with the gravy and French fries, and it sounds kind of weird, but it actually works. And like that's just the base one. Like that's what the normal poutine is. But people have gotten creative in the last number of years, and like there's a place in Vancouver. I think it's on Robson Street. I could be wrong. It's right downtown in Vancouver, BC. Anyway, there's 101 different ways to get poutine. Like they'll throw in pulled pork or something. Like there's it's like pizza. Like there's all kinds of different ingredients, different sets of ingredients, and they give it a name or whatever. My favorite is just the classic poutine though, with just the cheese and the gravy on top. So what I'm asking you to do is tell me, how do you like your French fries? Like, what do you put on them? Are you some kind of pervert like my sister and put vinegar on them? Like, oh God, I can't understand why people do that. I hear people put mayonnaise on them. I don't get that at all. Ketchup, I like them dipped in ketchup. That's pretty good. Just gravy, that's good as well. Anyway, actually, I've had some pachos before too, and those are like round French fries, but with the kind of topping that you would have nachos. Like you substitute the potatoes with, or substitute the chips with potatoes, and you make nachos. So I've had pachos before. That wasn't too bad. But anyway, tell me, how do you like your French fries? What do you put on your French fries? And that's how you're going to win this prize. But don't tell anybody I put gravy on my French fries and I want to win the prize. Just say, I like gravy. Or whatever you do, right? And that's how you're going to enter this contest to win Doug's prize here, the full French set, and General Hand Grenade's prize, the added on 7 custom infantry. And I will take your submissions, and in a few days I'll make another video after we roll the dice a bunch of times and find out who wins, and then I'll ship that off to you. Okay, so I don't know that there's much else to tell you. We'll take another quick look at this set here, this beautiful French set that I'm loving so much. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. Take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.